My next guest is Adam Stolzer. He is a principal of Burwell Junior and Senior High School in Burwell. Is it, what state is that?
Nebraska.
Nebraska, yes, I know.
Yes.
Currently in his second year as principal, he is extraordinarily intentional. He's been extraordinarily intentional about his approach to instructional leadership. And I welcome you on the Out of the Trenches podcast, Adam.
Well, thanks for having me. It's humbling, and anytime that you can talk shop about education, it's a great day to just share your passion and with like-minded individuals.
Well, we'll start off with the question I ask everybody. Tell me about a time when you were in the trenches and managed to grow it.
Yeah, and in education, I think it happens to all of us at one point, and maybe different points, and the size of the trench is different. But for me, the one that comes to mind is after my first year as principal, where I was reflecting on the year, and I had a lot of time to reflect. My son was born right at the end of my first year as principal, so I was home a lot, and I had a lot of time to reflect. And I was in the trench where I was having a hard time managing management versus leadership. And I felt that I was either in my office doing paperwork and being locked in there, or something was pulling me away, or I was out and about in my building. It was like a hard time balancing. So I felt it was either one or the other. And that's just not who I am. Like, I have to be moving. I don't sit still well. I want to be around my people, my staff. I want to be around my students. So I just felt like I was either fully invested of where the learning and teaching was happening, or I was like totally isolated and removed from it. And I wasn't supporting who needed that support.
And how did you move away from that trench?
Yeah, so I took a leap, and I really got into the mobile office, where I reflected what was pulling me away from being around my students and my staff, and it was my computer. And if my computer was always in my office, it wasn't all the way charged, or I needed to type something up, I needed to look something up, I needed to do something on my computer, where just being able to have a $80 Amazon mobile desk that had wheels that I could have my computer on, and even find an outlet and plug in where I could do stuff and still be in the hallway, was something that has changed here in my second year as principal, where I feel more balance of the management versus leadership. Principal Lamb, who was on social media down in Louisiana, he was kind of the one where he had put a lot of content out last summer about that. And I'm like, gosh, that's just me, like moving around, not isolated, and seeing the really cool things. So that's the power of social media, where you can see a lot of good things on there and take it and make it your own.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, being tied to your office to do paperwork, it's just, you're not a visible leader that way, right? And being out and about using that mobile desk, you can get your paperwork done, your everything you need to do on the computer, and still get around the school. So besides using the mobile desk, how have you grown as a leader? In the past couple of years, you said you moved on to the principalship. You were a teacher in the same school.
Yes, yeah. I was a teacher here for 7 years in Burwell, taught math, and moved on. And I've always in my head had the importance of visibility and growing teachers and being involved in the learning process, and not just totally being isolated, but showing that support, not micromanaging. There's a very fine line. And so walkthroughs is something I think that I've taken a lot of pride in, and that's something that Dr. Bader has put a lot of information out on, and that was probably my first mentor, reading his work and listening to his podcasts, doing his instructional leadership challenge, where having dedicated time to get out into classrooms. Now, having the mobile desk, it's had the opportunity to where it's not have to be so structured, but there is times where it has to be structured to give genuine and specific feedback. And I think that's probably where I've grown to from year one to year two. Year one, you're really just building the routine and the consistency of getting into classrooms and building that relationship where students are comfortable with you being in the classroom, teachers are being comfortable. And now you get to the point where, okay, now feedback and a little bit of, I saw this, maybe try something new, and helping teachers grow in their instructional practices. And so between Mr. Maynard, my superintendent, who's a mentor, who also did classroom walkthroughs, he was my principal for a year. And then with Justin Bader's work, I mean, I think those being more intentional with what those walkthroughs look like, and not just quick, here's what I saw, good job, and it's not genuine, specific, and helping teachers grow and support them.
So let's break down a few of those things. So one of the things, as many principals are experiencing, there's a lot of turnover and there's a lot of new teachers who are new to the profession. So you talked to me a little bit in the pre-chat about new teacher mentorship and getting some of those processes together. So how are you planning for the 24-25 school year in terms of your new teachers?
Yeah, great question. And whether new or old staff, veteran staff, where they've been here, I mean, everybody wants support, and that's where the
Yeah,
power of those walkthroughs. I mean, it's amazing when you're out in the hall working and, hey, I have a question, or I would like your input on this. Where if you're in your office, they're not going to come seek you out and do that. But proximity is king, presence
sure.
is king with all of that. So definitely the mentorship mentee piece of our new teachers. We're going to have two new teachers to my building this school year. One is fresh out of college. I'm really excited to have her. But we have a 2-year plan with our new teachers. They have a mentor teacher. It starts out with monthly activities for the first year, from classroom management to just how things are done in Burwell. Every school is unique, whether it's their student information system, just their common practices of where's the copier at, where is the teacher supplies, how do I put PTO in. So we have those in there with some also kind of the science part of teaching. There's the art side where they can have theirs flow, but just that science part, what are good common practices for everybody. And we've actually already had those meetings with our new staff coming in. I like to get them on campus as early as I can. So get them here over the summer, let them know that they're welcome
Yeah.
to come into our building as soon as they want to. I mean, obviously they're not contracted to till August, but come in, see the place, be ready to go to your classroom, give them everything they need. We also give them just like a frequently asked questions thing where, to read through. And in the second year after the monthly activities, it gets into more quarterly meetings. But I think the biggest thing is just constant contact with their mentor. And it is dedicated talking points of what's going to happen when we get together each month. And evaluation for new teachers is always a scary thing of, oh, the
Yeah.
principal's
Yeah.
the principal's coming in. So
Yeah.
hopefully with walkthroughs, like they're used to that. But we
Yeah.
also get their mentor teacher in their classroom to watch them before I do, so
Yeah.
that again they have somebody else kind of giving them some feedback before it's me. And I always wait to do new staff till like the last possible second with their first one, just because I want them to feel comfortable with me coming in during walkthroughs and giving them feedback. And that's a big thing we push at opening days is if we're only going to be in there the 2 or 1 times that I come and observe you, that's less than 1% of your school year. Where if I come in constantly, we're getting more and more feedback, more and more data of what actually happens in your classroom. So the evaluation process isn't so high stakes.
So that's one piece of helping those teachers get used to you being visible. How did the observation of how leaders were when you were a teacher, how did that influence your current visibility in building?
Yes, I think that really drove where I was at as I took my principal classes, where as a teacher, I felt that the administration only came in when I needed something or I was being evaluated. It
Yeah.
wasn't just to check in. So like that didn't sit well with me, or it was something that internally I kept battling. Like, I don't think that's what leadership is. I
Yeah.
think leadership is involved. And I've always said that if you want to know what's going on in your building, go be out in it. If you want to
Yeah.
know how the lunchroom operates, go to the lunchroom. If you have a mass study hall and you want to know why you're having so many behavioral issues, go to it, go be part of it. So if you want to know about the instruction that's going on in your building, go be part of it and celebrate those things. So yes, the predecessors definitely led to my thinking that way. And then it was through a class through University of Nebraska at Kearney, where we did some stuff where I got introduced to Justin Bader. And then that kind of led where I got to, okay, I'm not crazy. Like this is a thing. This
Yeah.
is a normal practice, and it's becoming more normal, and being in a position to support your students and your staff.
So you took over the principalship. The previous principal moved on to the superintendency in your district, and you said that he had started walkthroughs before you were brought in as a principal. So you already had some ideas of how to do walkthroughs. So what are some of the things that you use that he had already set in place, and some of the things that you might be using that you learned during the Instructional Leadership Challenge with the Principal Center?
Yes, great question. And that was a big thing when we transitioned from Mr. Maynard to myself, was consistency. So for 6 years before, we had never had any walkthroughs, never had any feedback outside of those evaluation processes. Then Mr. Maynard comes in with tons of experience. I mean, he came from one of the largest districts in Las Vegas, and went to Wyoming and into Nebraska. So educational leadership across many states in different timeframes. And he had a tool. He had a walkthrough form that was handwritten note. I know we're 2024, where text message, email, everything is AI, it's electronic, but there's a big power in a handwritten note, especially when providing feedback to somebody. So we still use those handwritten forms. We've tweaked them to where a little bit of what our district goals are, of some instructional framework, saying things that we're looking for, just spontaneous on the spot things. We're still using those. Just a little half sheet of paper, nothing crazy, but just here's what I see when I walk in. Here's some things that as a district we're focusing on. And I saw them, or I didn't see them that time. I mean, you might only be in there for 2 to 3 minutes. You may not see everything.
Yeah.
And I think that's the first misconception that you got to get over is, okay, they're looking for, checking for understanding. Well, maybe in a 2 to 3 minute window, you might not be doing a checking for understanding because of wherever you're at in the lesson. And that, just because we didn't mark it, that means it's not a bad thing. We've also added an online component, because it is nice to have just that internal organization where it's a Google form. It sends out a Google Doc to everybody, and then we just have that in multiple avenues of having some walkthroughs. But I think just as much as it's important to have a documented one, those undocumented ones of just don't take a piece of paper, don't take a pen, just go out and watch and absorb it. I mean, you can take mental notes, you can go back and write some things down, so that's good. But I think the biggest thing between Mr. Maynard having those pieces, us tweaking our own, and then Justin, is just making sure that you are dedicated to it, whether it's a routine, whether it's the mobile desk, or whether it's scheduling time. Create a routine for you that puts you out in your building.
Yeah. So is there a common misconception in terms of things that a principal has to do during the school day that'll keep them from being visible and in classrooms doing these walkthroughs?
Yeah, it's funny. We our new principal, Mr. Nelson, here at the elementary school, we had the mentor meeting this summer, and he's like, "Hey, can you just tell me how many reports do I got to do online? Like, how much of my time each week is going to be on the computer doing reports for the Department of Ed?" And I said, a half a day at the beginning of the year and a half a day at the end of the year. Maybe here. So and I think I had that too. Like, okay, NDE, the portal, you have all these reports. Like, you don't have that much that has to be documented and all that. So I think that's a big misconception, that there's all these reports that have to be done. Sure, parent phone calls and some of those things are going to get you in there. Some discipline issues are going to pull you away, but it's not like you're typing a report or submitting data on a daily basis. There is plenty of time to be out and about in your building. Yeah, you might have some heavy days where you need to get some stuff done, but I think when you first take that first job, it's like, okay, I have to have all these things done, and if I don't put them in our student information system, or I don't submit them, I'm going to get fired because we don't have it. And there's just not that much that consumes your time.
And then you told me that just going on those walkthroughs, even without taking the notes, they're like a cup filler for you, right?
Yes. Yeah. Anytime that you can see students succeed, it fills your cup. And teachers sharing their passion. It's easy Friday night at the football game when the whole town shuts down to go to the football game, or
Yeah.
everybody comes to the basketball game. It's easy to see those successes because it's at 7 o'clock at night, people aren't working. But how about the student who got their roller coaster that they've been working on for the science fair to finally go from start to finish without any interruptions? And
Yeah.
that's a success that you don't get to see in your office. Or the student who got their first A on a test and they want to share that with you, or that teacher who has that aha moment with a student. That's what you get with just spontaneous walking around. Or you had a staff development day and you went over an engagement strategy, and now that teacher who has never done that before is now implementing that, and you see the class go to a whole new area. Like, those things you don't see from your office, and 99% of people don't get to see it because they're not in our building. But when you're out and about in your building, you get to have those moments where your cup gets filled, because this is why I'm in education. This is the win. This is the celebrating of success that we get to see on a daily basis by being present in our building.
Yeah, yeah, that's so important to remember. You said now that you're starting your third year as principal, you want to work more into being active at the state level, promoting educational leadership and connecting educational leaders across the state of Nebraska. What are some of your ideas on how to do that? You're in a rural area, but you told me there's a principal conference that's in the middle of Nebraska. So
Yeah. Well, for before being principal, I was basketball coach and moving there now. And one of my favorite things as a basketball coach was talking shop. And like I said at the beginning of this, like, just talking educational leadership fires me up. And in a rural area where we're an hour and a half to the closest Walmart, like, it's me, Mr. Nelson, and Mr. Maynard. Like, that's our little area that we get to talk, and we talk plenty. Trust me, like, we got to do that. But I want to connect with other educators across the state. So I've started Cornhusker Chats, which you can follow me on X that way. And that's just where I kind of share my educational leadership thoughts. And I'm hoping that I can get a podcast started with that, of just getting other educators from around Nebraska up and talking educational leadership and what's going on in their neck of the woods, and sharing. I think that those are the two professions that I've been in the longest, have been coaching and educational leadership. And I think that they are two that all they want to do is share and support people. Like, I've never met a superintendent or a principal that says, no, I'm not going to share that with you, or I'm not going to help you out and do this. Like, it's like, here, you take it, steal it, make it what you want, and go.
yeah.
So that, and then we have administrator days, which is the big all administrators in Nebraska get together at the end of July. And we go to Kearney. It's a great 2.5, 3 day conference. And I'm going to be speaking there on I got my first principal job, now what? And kind of just go over some of the things that I think helped me with a smooth transition. Some things that Mr. Maynard and I had talked about, some things I've shared with Mr. Nelson, just learning from some experience where, like the fact that you don't have to sit in your office and do a bunch of paperwork. You can get out and about, and just some different tips and tricks that I think that helped me be successful as a young administrator in my first years. And I hope that I can just, again, connect with other leaders and share that with them.
Yeah, no, and it's great to hear somebody, like you're saying, really likes to share your expertise and what you've learned with others in the state, and on X, with leaders throughout the U.S. and other parts of the world. And I just think you learning along the way, like you said, from these other people as well, has helped you become more visible and make more of a difference in your building. So we've talked a lot about your philosophy of leadership, some of the things you've done as you've grown as a principal. Out of everything we've talked about, what's one thing you'd like listeners to remember?
Just be where your feet are. A lot about presence. A lot of times we want to look that the grass is always greener somewhere else. But the greenest grass is where you water it. And water the grass where your feet are. So when you're with your in classrooms and you're around students and you're being present, water that grass and you're going to see things grow. Don't just expect them to happen on their own. Don't expect them to happen from your office. But when you're out and about and invested in your people and cultivating your staff and your students to be the best they can, you're going to see the growth that you want, and you're going to be proud to be where you're from. And I'm sure proud to be from Burwell.
Where can people connect with you and find you online?
Yes, so at Cornhusker Chats, that's my educational one there. I also am at Adam_Stolzer 28 is another one. And then hit me up on email at adam.stolzer@burwellpublicschools.com. And you can find me on my staff website there. But I'd love to connect with anybody and just continue to share educational leadership and just share our passion for impacting students.
Thank you so much for being on the Out of the Trenches podcast today. It's a
Thank
pleasure
you so
having you
much.
on.